allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Now, Honorable Member Suresh Prabhu.
Thank you, Madam. I am speaking on the grants, demand of grants for the Human Resource Development Ministry. Madam, in India, we are very fond of rechristening, renaming, offering different nomenclatures to the existing institutions. Our late Prime Minister, late Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, gave this new name to this ministry called Human Resource Development Ministry. Earlier it used to be known as Ministry for Education. Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was striving to take India to 21st century at a very fast speed. We are all very happy that now, since the name has changed, the human beings who used to live in India, who used to go to schools and colleges seeking education, now would go there only as means to develop themselves, as the new re-Christian ministry is going to now develop students into better human beings. Madam, unfortunately, after the sad, of course he lost power before that, but he is no longer living. Mr. Narasimha Rao, who was the Human Resource Development Minister during his regime as a Prime Minister, subsequently became a Prime Minister, and now we had two Prime Ministers in a span of less than 1 year. And now this is a time to take stock about what has really happened since we re-christened this ministry as a Human Resource Development Ministry. Madam, since we have changed the name, has it really helped in developing a country on the lines in which it was envisaged when this country was re-christened? I think the government owes an explanation to people for us to really know, to take stock and to find out whether this, what was the laudable objectives which were spelled out when this ministry was really set up or re-christened, that name has really served the purpose for which it has been accomplished. The results, of course, as I mentioned in the annual report, as well as the results which we see in our day-to-day life when we really come across students, really don't say that we are really attained what we really wanted to do so. Madam, we have been nowadays, since we are talking about this new economic policy, have been talking about infrastructure as a means of development of the economy. The physical infrastructure that we need, the roads, the bridges, the power generation, the railways, and so on and so forth, is really necessary, and the common minimum program talks about minimum needs of $200 billion of infrastructure that India needs in these various sectors. Madam, are we prepared to consider education and health as an infrastructure for development? I remember the World Bank has really talked about infrastructure as a means of development, but has failed to recognize, not the World Bank, but the country as a whole. I am just citing World Bank to give a small example. The World Bank also has failed to recognize this as one of the important infrastructure development and has not yet financed to the extent to which it should have. Madam, we had a plague in some part of India, and our entire economic activity came to standstill because of some health hazard in one small part of India called Surat, city of Surat, and the entire country's economy came to standstill. So even lack of investment into social sectors like education and health can really bring about economic chaos in times to come. So Madam, I think this is a time that the common minimum program, which talks about infrastructure investment as one of the key development parameters, I feel they would also like to address themselves to this important segment of development of the country. Madam, the common minimum program talks about 6% of investment of GDP into education. The other day when we were talking on the general discussion on the budget, the Honorable Finance Minister, fortunately has come back again as a Finance Minister, said that the common minimum program does not refer to 6% of the GDP only at the center level. It seems the program is talking about the total investment of education, not only by the central government, but also by the state government, and that entire amount should be calculated as the amount that should go into infrastructure into education development. Madam, when I read it again, I never found this particular paragraph there, and I had said at that time also, like the animal farm, the manifesto which was written there had so many riders subsequently. Probably the common minimum program is now adding one more rider of investment by the states also into the education as to be computed for the purpose of finding out what should be the investment of 6% into GDP. But Madam, probably these are the figures, these are the cliches one use only to probably sidetrack the real main issues which confront the people and education system. Madam, the HRD ministry has various functions to perform. One of them is the Department of Education. Madam, we have found out that there are the scheme of the government. There are various steps on which the education pattern of the country is built up. The fundamental, the real foundation of the education is the primary education. There is a primary education, there is a technical education, there is a higher education. And there are cross sections of people who have got different views on what should be the priority of the government, where it should invest more. And as we see that though we are talking about even 6% of GDP, even if the entire amount has to really be spent, probably will not be able to do justice to all these three layers of educational means. And so we have to really address ourselves to some basic foundation, that is the primary education. And I am glad that the government is now thinking on those lines. In fact, there are several committees, I can say at least more than 20 committees, who have repeatedly said that the thrust should be the primary education and not so much on secondary or the higher education. But the question that really arises is the government going to really concentrate on primary education? It is whose baby is to look after the other layers of education, namely the secondary and the higher education. And I was glad that one of my esteemed colleague, when he was talking, he was also focusing the attention of the government to this very important issue. And this is a time that the government must come out with a concrete policy, maybe a white paper, on who is going to really look after this abundant baby of the government, the higher education and the secondary education. Is the private sector going to get involved into this? If so, at what price and on what terms? Who is going to regulate the role of these agencies, these institutions? Who is going to ensure the type of standard of education that these institutions need to impart, and what mechanism the government is really contemplating to ensure that it happens? This is a time that I hope the government will really come out with some sort of a policy on this. Madam, 25 crores on residential primary schools is supposed to be spent by the government during the current year, 1997-1998. The target of the government is to spend this amount on 100 districts of the country. Madam, if you really calculate, you are going to spend 25 crores on 100 districts, each district will get about 25 lakhs of rupees. And what type of residential school that is going to be created, which can take care of this need of the real super need of the primary education at the district level, and how it is going to be really catered to is something I think the government owes an explanation in terms of how that amount is going to be spent. Madam, the Sindhudurga district of Konkan, the area that I represent here in the parliament, the constituency is called Rajapur. It consists of 2 districts. Madam, Sindhudurga district is a district which was first declared as a fully literate district in the state of Maharashtra. We take honor and pride in saying this. This was the first district to be declared as such. Not Latur. Sir, Madam, sorry. Madam, this was the first district which was declared as the most, the fully literate district of the country. But I was surprised to see that probably this district is not included in a scheme of residential primary education in this 100 district that included. I see really no reason why a district which proclaims itself and takes pride in saying that we are a fully literate district should get a penalty for being so and not being included in this scheme. I think the government has a policy of penalizing good performing districts, and if
clear under that.
so, sir, can I take it as that this is going to be included?
It may.
Yes, thank you, sir.
It may.
Sir, the other point arising out of these fully literate districts, when we are declared, the literacy mission campaign that we carried on, and there are several districts, several areas of our country have reached this fully literate status. The point is, we spend a lot of money, energies, attention, time on making them fully literate. There has not been any follow-up action which has been taken, and all these literate people who became literate for a short period of time are now getting back into illiteracy. The functional literacy that was available to them for a short period of time, the money that we spent, the credit card that we took, the photographs that appeared in the newspaper, the media which was very proud and saying that a minister has been distributing the awards for fully literate people, those people now cannot even read the award that they received because they were made literate for a short period of time, but there is no follow-up action that is taken. So the money, the resources that we have spent is going waste, and I implore upon the government to please look into this aspect and do a follow-up mechanism. So the scheme should have an inbuilt feature of also doing some follow-up mechanism whereby the money spent on initially is not wasted and the people don't relapse into illiteracy after a period of time. Madam, the other laudable scheme of the government, which I compliment the minister now for really doing something innovative there, is a Shramik Vidyapit. The institution which caters to the real need of the rural areas. The people who cannot go to schools and colleges, or in fact they should not be going to schools and colleges, they go to these Shramik Vidyapits and they are paid and they are trained into the various trades which are really needed in the locales of that area, and I think this is a very good scheme. The amount that you are earmarked for this also has been increased from the current year, for which again I compliment you, but you must try to take into consideration the local needs of some of these areas and probably have not a straitjacket approach, but probably a very flexible approach whereby more amount can be spent where it is more needed than creating a straitjacket scheme whereby not many people can really take advantage of this. Madam, the various ills of the education, I am not supposed to be speaking on it as an authority, but as a former student of it, having gone to some schools and colleges, and also my son, my other members of the family go to schools and colleges, sometimes we really wonder, what is the real meaning of this education? Madam, as we understood, and you understand it better than all of us, because we went to school much earlier to when we went, we thought that education is a means of attaining some sort of an enlightenment. But now, we have been told that education is meant to only offer you knowledge. And this knowledge, again, is very restricted. And even after you supposedly have got this knowledge, what you are supposed to get is only a degree, which is a means to getting a job. So ultimately, we have really reduced this education as a means of getting some productive job in a job market, which is now getting more and more crowded. So, madam, have we forgotten our old value system, whereby we really wanted to impart education as a means of bringing about enlightenment in our society? And that is what I really would like the government to really spell out, that education is not a very limited means of offering just degrees to get jobs. So, madam, this is a time that we must have a different layers of education, different spheres of education. One who really seekers of knowledge, seekers of enlightenment would go to a particular type of schools and college and university. Those who want really job-oriented training would go to a particular type of institution. And those who really cannot pursue education to a level of BA or BCom or BSc would go to vocational training institution. This type of a clear demarcating lines had to be drawn between different types of education system, which we have not done. Though we have done it little haphazardly, we have created different institutions, but really not drawn such lines right from the primary level to the higher level. And in the absence of which, it always one gets confused as to what really is the meaning of the education. And I feel, and I would request the government to really come out with this program in a very clear manner. Madam, the woman whose cause is so dear to your heart, and you tried very hard to bring about a legislation, unfortunately it has not yet come before the House. Madam, this woman constitutes 60% of the population in my constituency. So I can proudly say that I am elected by women than by men. And I feel that it's my duty to really bring to your notice that there are not very specialized institutions in rural areas, particularly the area that I represent, which specialize in giving education to women. In the absence of which, there is a literacy in women is not as high as it should be. And that's why I would request that these primary schools that you are talking about, the little higher level residential school that you are talking about, there is a need to have special school for women, for girls, for the girls, so that probably this could really be taken care of. Madam, this district primary education project of the government, which had 650 crores allocation during the current year, I would request the minister to really, your budget document does not really spell out the details of the program that you intend to utilize and the amount to be utilized for. And if you can really enlighten us, it will be a good thing for us to really pursue. Madam, the nutrition supported for primary education the amount under the grant 2202, the amount that was spent, that was allocated under 1996-97 was 1400 crores. And all of us were very happy about it. In fact, the government has also taken credit for it. But a revised estimate has been reduced to 800 crores. The drop of 600 crores. And we didn't know why it has happened. And now the current year estimates, current year provision, yes, is only, so either what we mean is that the nutrition deficient people have declined, or the demand for nutritious food has declined, or the government's inability to reach to those who really needed this is something which we need to know. And in the current year, the amount that has been earmarked is only 960 crores. So I think the government, when it really came out with this figure of 1400 crores, there is a quantification of number of children who really deserve such high nutrition diet, so that they can also go to school, not on empty bellies, but probably without bothering about it. But now this reduction in the amount really means that we are going to not reach to those who really deserve such a help. Madam Chairperson, these fundamental rights of 35 crores under 14, that the government scheme to universalize the education, 35 crores has been provided, so that as a fundamental right, children below 14 years of age would be forced to go to school. That is what I understand when I read the meaning of it. But when you are going to use a coercive measure to ensure that there is a due compliance to the scheme, there has not been any statutory changes which have been effected by the government. Can government bring about a forced implementation of such a scheme in the existing legal framework, or government needs to implement or bring about a new legislative measures? And if so, when are they going to come? Otherwise, this scheme also will meet the same fate as it as the other scheme which I just mentioned has already received. Madam, the vocationalization of education was another good scheme of which quite a few of my esteemed colleagues have already spoken. I would only request you to do it in this way, that we should not confine a scheme to be implemented and to be ended only when a certificate under the scheme is issued to a student. Rather than that, there is a need to have an integrated approach. You can involve some NGOs, some other institutions who could take that forward from that place, and probably the person who has completed a training may start a job of his own, may get some money to start a job with the help of maybe an NGO, with a bank or with some other institution, or he is absorbed by some other institution for doing something more concrete which he has already received in such a training. Madam, there has been a very lot, we have got so many institutions in the country, so probably we have to read the names and be happy about it. One such institution is Rashtriya Sanskrit Samstha. Madam, the mother of all Indian languages is Sanskrit. And sometimes it pains us when we listen to some people saying that Sanskrit should not be used in India. In fact, it is too late today, but probably Sanskrit could have been even used as a link language for many of our states, and probably could have solved a very major problem. But many times we politicalize many issues, and so we may not like this concept. But even the mother language of Malayalam is also Sanskrit. So I think this could have been used as a very effective means of spreading national integrity, of really bringing about a uniform concept of knowledge spreading. And I think the government must spend more money on that rather than creating this as a head of expenditure. It should be a head in which probably more attention should be drawn by the government. Madam, I would only request that when I talked about a white paper, this is a time that we must come out with a proper new education policy. We don't have to have an education policy and appoint committees. Probably all these committees which are already recommended, one must sit down, go through the good points in the report and come out with a policy. Madam, we go to college and schools, and at the end of the year, we appear for the examinations. The entire process of a year is used only when the exams are there. Probably when the exams have become a farce because they are not conducted in the atmosphere in which it should be conducted. But can we not move on to a system whereby a student goes to a school or college, learns a particular topic, and immediately thereafter answers the question, so that whatever he has learned during that particular period is absorbed in his own mind, and probably the knowledge is retained and not used to be used only at the time of examination. Can you not think about a concept like this? Is something which the government must address itself to, and should include this as a part of its white paper policy. Madam, the last point on the education, I would like to request the Minister to really address himself to this very important issue of the nexus that must be there between universities, research institutions and industry. They cannot work towards cross purposes. They cannot work in isolation. In fact, we always cite United States as an example of how education institutions, education system should be developed. We find that disintegration complete in this country, and I feel that we must really now come out with a proper understanding of this important issue. Madam, I have already moved a cut motion which I will take on later on, but just talking about this important subject which is dearer to the heart of our esteemed friend who is trying to increase India's participation in international level in various sports. I also represent one institution. I am a sports administrator, and that's why I would like to take a flag probably in a smaller measure for whatever is going wrong in the sports arena. Madam, this year we are going to celebrate the 50th year of India's independence, and 200 crores has been earmarked for that amount, for that purpose. So far, we'll begin, I don't know whether we are going to begin the celebration of the New Year on the 15th of August or 15th of August is going to end, because actually there are some programs we here are part of the celebration of India's 50th year of independence. If this 200 crores is going to be spent during a year's time, it should not be spent on maybe some people going abroad and going to find out how other persons in the world perceive India's independence from a distance. But it should be spent as real monument creation, whereby these 200 crores will remain permanently in the memory of people for having spent it in that fashion. So is the government thinking of formulating a policy and taking the parliament into confidence about this large 200 crores amount, how it is going to be spent? And I would request, as a thought towards how it could be spent, is create an infrastructure for sports in rural areas. Madam Chairperson, my constituency can again take a credit for producing the best of the sportsmen in the country, or for that matter in the world. Mr. Sachin Tendulkar, Mr. Sunil Gavaskar, Vinod Kambli, Dilip Vengsarkar, all these players are from my constituency. They were born in my constituency. Of course, you have to give credit for that to them, not to me. But these players were created by my region, which has no sports facilities. So can not these 200 crores be spent on rural areas from where there is the creation of talent takes place in that area? So can we not utilize this money to be spent for creating rural infrastructure for sports in those areas? Madam, this year we are going to spend only 125 crores on youth affairs. 125 crores of a country of 950 million people is something which is, if not a farce, is a cruel joke on the youth of our country. Madam, we always criticize our young people for saying that they take on to drugs. There is an increasing percentage of young people getting afflicted by AIDS. But are we doing anything enough to make sure that they engage themselves into creative and productive facilities and take good care of the youth of a country who are really the backbone of our tomorrow's society? Madam, I had a good fortune of visiting GDR, popularly then known as East Germany, and I was really surprised and very happy to see there are thousands of youth clubs in the countryside. Each neighborhood, each locality had a youth club which could offer the best of the facilities to the youth of those countries. Nowadays, our youth affairs ministry is nothing but a bureaucratization, and not only of bureaucrats who are young in age, but those who have already passed it long time ago. So can we not really think about youth affairs as an activity which is a total commitment towards youth, rather than creating this as a subhead of accounts in the books of the government, but rather than as a commitment towards the development of youth as a power? Madam, the youth hostel that we have are 49 in the country, 49 youth hostels in the country, of which there is only one in the state of Maharashtra. Maharashtra, which has a population of almost 8.5 crores, can have only one youth hostel amongst the 49 that are there in the country. I think this type of imbalance that needs to be removed, and you must really encourage to have more youth hostels in a state like state of Maharashtra. I am sure it should be in other states also, but a state which has such a high population cannot be ignored and just have only one youth hostel. Madam, this Nehru Yuva Kendras, which are also laudable Kendras which were started, we must make sure that at least 80% of the money of these Yuva Kendras is spent on non-salaries and non-administration, but for the purpose for which these Kendras have been created. Then and then only we will be able to attend to this type of activities. Madam, the Department of Culture, I'll just finish very quickly on the last point of Department of Culture. Madam, the Department of Culture has produced probably the best report, annual report, that any ministry or any department of the government has created. And I must compliment you, sir, as well as the persons who are responsible for bringing about such a wonderful report. In fact, this report should be sent to many other departments to give an example how a report should be created. But madam, such talent which is available within the ministry should also be utilized for not only creation of report at one time at the end of the year, but probably carrying out such activities during the year. The Department of Culture should not just confine itself and should only focus to create good reports, but probably bring about good activities round the corner. Sir, there are several focal arts of which we are all very proud, which have remained and which could withstand the assault of cultural aggression of various types and could still be practiced by people, are not documented. Madam, I would cite only one example of Dashavtari, a very popular folk art in the state of Maharashtra in the Sindhudurga district. It has withstood the assault for 550 years. In fact, the Yakshagan, which is more popular and which is more famous, owes its origin to Dashavtar. And I feel there is a need to have a documentation center. Otherwise, this will be lost to posterity forever, and Department of Culture must really address itself to this. And madam, the one very important point of which I am sure you will be definitely concerned with is the Archaeological Survey of India. Madam, this has been created in 1861. It is supposed to be maintaining 3,593 monuments in the country. But madam, when we go to such monuments, the only way that we can feel that they are maintained is by the board that is put there, which again cannot be read by many people. But are we really serious about maintaining these very important monuments which have remained in India for even thousands of years, some of those? And it will be a really, I would say, the most callous part on the part of the government not to maintain them in the same old fashion and to give same old glory to the monument. And we must spend enough money on that. And if we cannot do that, madam, we must ensure that are handed over to such institutions who can take responsibility for its maintenance. Maybe some of these, if they are used for tourist attractions, probably they also could be maintained in better fashion. Government can play a regulatory role to make sure that its institutions adhere to the rules which are prescribed by the government, but must be maintained. And I was also surprised to know that there are protected monuments, 3593, but there are unprotected monuments. Sir, I would request you to please give difference between the two, because then can we presume that the protected monuments are protected by the government in true sense of the term, and government is responsible for any wrong thing that can happen to this, and could be held responsible for this, if this is something which really need to tell us and to the nation, so that we will be really happy that these monuments are going to be properly maintained. And madam, the last point is...
Again last?
Yes, absolutely the last, madam. Last on this question. Madam,
Quick.
UNESCO
2 minutes.
and the Ministry of Culture, the Department of Culture is supposed to be keeping a close liaison with the UNESCO. I am aware that some of the monuments which were referred by UNESCO for proper maintenance has not been properly done. In fact, UNESCO had offered not only financial but also technical help to restore and to maintain such monuments. There has been an instance when the government of Japan wanted to donate a large amount of money to maintain certain historical monuments in Gaya, in Bihar. But probably the government of Bihar as well as the central government looking after Bihar is busy in doing something else there, so didn't get time to look into these aspects. So I request the Honorable Minister to please make sure that all these monuments are properly maintained and the UNESCO programs are implemented in the proper fashion. The UNESCO National Commission should not be used only as a bureaucratic method, but there are more than 1,000 UNESCO clubs in the country. You must involve them into the functioning of this important aspect of your functioning. Thank you very much, madam, if I have taken longer time. Sorry.
Thank you.